Throwaway for obvious reasons. So I, male, 34, honestly thought I was being the best boyfriend possible during my fiancée's cancer treatment, but apparently I stole her voice and made her feel like a child. I'm completely lost here and need to know if I'm missing something huge. Am I the idiot for taking care of all the financial and medical stuff during her treatment instead of letting her deal with the stress? Okay, so my fiancée Sarah, female 29, and I have been together for 3 years, engaged for about 2 of those. She's a marketing coordinator at some mid-sized company, honestly doesn't pay great, maybe like 40K, and I'm a project manager making around 90K. Before anyone asks, yeah, the money thing has always been a bit of an issue, but I thought we were handling it fine. I mean, I was already helping with her rent and stuff before she got sick, but that's what you do when you love someone, right? I guess I should mention that my mom was sick a lot when I was growing up, really sick. Chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, the whole mess. By the time I was 12, I was basically managing all her medical appointments, keeping track of her medications. She had this huge pill organizer that I'd fill every week, and dealing with insurance companies because my dad just couldn't handle it. My family always told me how mature and responsible I was. My aunts would be like, "Oh my God, look how well he takes care of his mother. What a good boy." So I guess I learned pretty early that when someone you love is sick, you step up and handle everything so they can focus on getting better. Sarah's family is different. She's the youngest of 4 kids, and they call her their miracle baby because she was born after her mom had multiple miscarriages. Then when she was 8, she got really sick with some autoimmune thing and spent 3 months in and out of the hospital. Her whole family basically revolves around protecting her from any kind of stress or difficulty. Even now, her parents still help with her car payments and stuff. Her sister told me once that their parents never wanted Sarah to worry about the hard parts of life after what she went through as a kid. Anyway, last year we're planning our wedding, nothing huge but still expensive, when Sarah finds this lump during a self-exam. Long story short, stage 2 breast cancer. The doctor explained the whole treatment plan. 6 months of chemo, then radiation, surgery might be needed depending on how the tumors respond. I'm sitting there taking notes on my phone while Sarah's just staring at the wall in shock. I mean, what was I supposed to do? Let her drown in medical bills and insurance paperwork while she's fighting for her life. The second we got home from that appointment, I called our insurance company. Well, my insurance company, she was on my plan by then, and got all the pre-authorizations sorted out. I set up automatic payments for everything, made spreadsheets tracking all the costs, researched the best oncologists in the area, found support groups, the whole thing. I know this sounds like a lot, but honestly, I'm good at this stuff. Project management is literally my job. When there's a crisis, you make lists, you organize, you take control of the situation. That's how problems get solved. During her appointments, I always brought my laptop and took detailed notes. The doctors would explain treatment options, and I'd ask follow-up questions about success rates, side effects, drug interactions. I made charts tracking her symptoms and medication schedules, color-coded everything. I know that sounds obsessive, but chemo is serious. You can't just wing it with medication timing. When she started getting really tired from the treatments, I told her to stop taking the bus to appointments because public transport is gross and full of germs, and her immune system was compromised. So I drove her to everything, or sometimes called Ubers when I couldn't get off work. The whole time I'm thinking I'm being this amazing supportive partner, like she never had to see a single medical bill. I dealt with all the insurance mess. They kept denying claims for the stupidest reasons. I researched every treatment option and made sure she was getting the best care possible. When she was too tired to speak up for herself during appointments, I made sure the doctors answered all our questions. I thought I was protecting her from all the stressful parts so she could focus on healing. She finished her last radiation treatment 2 weeks ago, and I thought, finally, time to celebrate. We can start planning the wedding again, get back to normal life. So I booked this nice restaurant downtown and told her we were celebrating her being cancer-free. Everything seemed fine until we started talking about wedding stuff again. I mentioned that maybe we should wait another 6 months before setting a date, just to make sure her recovery was complete and we weren't rushing into anything while her body was still healing from treatment. You know, being responsible about it. That's when she completely lost it. She started crying and saying that I'd stolen her voice throughout her entire cancer experience. that I never let her speak for herself during doctor appointments, that I treated her like a patient instead of a person. She said she felt like a child who wasn't allowed to make decisions about her own body and her own treatment. Then she said, and this is the part that really got me, that she was already scared out of her mind about having cancer, and I made her feel even more powerless by taking over everything. I tried to explain that I was just trying to help, that I wanted to protect her from additional stress, but she kept saying I didn't listen and made everything about being efficient instead of asking what she needed. She said during appointments I would answer questions the doctors asked her, and that she started just sitting there silently because I had everything planned out anyway. I honestly don't understand. Like, I paid for everything. I researched everything. I organized everything. I made sure she got the best possible care. Isn't that what you're supposed to do when someone you love is sick? My mom always told me I was so helpful when she was dealing with her health issues. But Sarah just kept crying and saying she felt invisible during her own cancer treatment. That even though I was trying to help, she felt like I was treating her like she was incapable of handling her own medical decisions. She said something like, "You never asked what I wanted. You just decided what was best for me. I mean, it's cancer. There's no room for inefficiency when you're dealing with something that's serious. Someone has to take charge and make sure everything gets handled properly. And since I'm better with paperwork and have more experience dealing with medical stuff, obviously I was the logical choice to manage everything. But now she's saying I was controlling and made her feel erased during the scariest time of her life. She keeps bringing up how I would interrupt her during appointments to ask the doctors my own questions, or how I set up all the payment stuff without asking her opinion first. I'm so confused. I thought I was being supportive. I thought I was being helpful. Was I supposed to just let her struggle with insurance companies while she was nauseated from chemo? Let her worry about money when she should have been focusing on getting better? Am I the idiot for taking care of everything during her treatment? Because honestly, I feel like I'm being attacked for trying to be a good partner. Edit. Since people are asking, no, I never asked her how she wanted me to help during treatment. I just saw what needed to be done and did it. And yes, she did try to bring up feeling left out of decisions a couple times during treatment, but I thought she was just stressed from the chemo and would appreciate my help more once she was feeling better. I guess I was wrong about that. Now for the first update. You guys were right about things getting worse since my last post. I honestly thought the conversation about me stealing her voice was going to be the worst part of this whole mess, but apparently I had no idea what was actually going on behind my back. So this happened a few days ago, and I'm still trying to process it. I was eating lunch with some coworkers, and Mike from accounting says something like, "Hey man, your fiancé's cancer posts are really inspiring. My wife has been following her journey and showing me the updates." I'm like, what posts? I mean, Sarah has Instagram and Facebook, but she mostly just posts like basic stuff. Pictures of her coffee, random sunset photos, the usual social media nonsense. Nothing deep or personal about cancer. So I pull out my phone right there and check her Instagram. And yeah, there's posts, but they're all super generic. Feeling grateful today with a picture of flowers. One day at a time with some motivational quote thing. Nothing about treatment or doctors or anything medical really. Mike's looking at me weird, and he tells me about the posts where she talks about fighting alone and having to advocate for herself. Posts that get like hundreds of comments from other cancer survivors. I'm sitting there thinking, what the hell is he talking about? Fighting alone. I was literally at every single appointment. Well, except maybe 2 when I had emergency meetings at work, but I always made sure she had rides. This is where it gets really messed up. I ask Mike to show me what he's talking about, and he pulls up his wife's phone, because apparently she follows Sarah. And there are all these posts I've never seen before. Posts from like 3 months ago about learning to speak up when others try to take over your medical care. Posts about fighting for your voice when someone thinks they know what's best for you. One really long one about surviving cancer while also having to stand up to dismissive partners who treat you like a child. I'm reading this stuff and honestly I felt like I was going to throw up right there in the break room. Because in these posts, I don't exist as someone helping her. I exist as this controlling asshole who made her cancer treatment harder. She wrote this whole thing about having to find her strength and advocate for herself against someone who dismissed her concerns and took over her medical decisions. The worst part, in her posts, it sounds like she went through treatment basically alone. like I was some obstacle she had to overcome instead of, I don't know, the person who drove her to appointments and organized her entire treatment plan and made sure she never had to worry about a single bill. So I immediately try to go to her profile to see these posts myself, and guess what? I can only see the boring generic ones. She'd literally changed her privacy settings so I couldn't see the real posts. Who does that? Who hides their cancer recovery posts from their own fiancé? Mike's wife, who I barely know by the way, shows me more screenshots, and there's months of this stuff. Comments from strangers telling her how brave she is for standing up to toxic partners during such a vulnerable time. People calling her a warrior for fighting cancer and emotional abuse at the same time. Emotional abuse. That's what they're calling me trying to help her. I couldn't even finish my lunch. I just left work early and went home to confront her about this. When I got home, she was on the couch watching Netflix, and I just straight up asked her about the social media posts and why she was hiding them from me. She immediately got defensive and started accusing me of stalking her online and violating her privacy. I showed her the screenshots that Mike's wife had shared, and she claimed they were taken out of context and that she needed a safe space to process her feelings. A safe space. From me. Her fiancé, who spent 6 months making sure she had everything she needed. She started crying, which honestly, she does that a lot when we argue, I'm starting to notice, and said I was trying to control even her private thoughts and emotions. When I pointed out that the posts made it sound like I wasn't even there during her treatment, she accused me of dismissing her lived experience and said that just because I thought I was helping didn't mean that's how it felt to her. I tried explaining that I was confused because we'd talked about all the medical decisions together. I'd researched everything, I'd made sure she got the best care, but she just kept saying I never really listened to how she felt, and that she had to hide the posts because I would have made it about myself instead of supporting her healing process. I honestly don't understand how paying for everything and organizing everything and being at every appointment equals emotional abuse, but apparently that's the story she's been telling the internet for months. But wait, it gets worse. 3 days later, so yesterday, Sarah's sister Amy calls me asking if we can meet for coffee, just me and her. She sounded really nervous on the phone and said she needed to talk to me about something important but didn't want Sarah to know. So we meet at this Starbucks near her work, and Amy looks uncomfortable as hell. She starts off by saying she's been struggling with something for weeks, and her guilt is eating her up, her words. Then she tells me that their family has been having weekly phone calls about concerns with my actions during Sarah's treatment. Weekly calls about me for months. Amy says it started around month 2 of Sarah's chemo when their brother started reporting back to the family that I was dominating all the appointment interactions and speaking for Sarah. Plus, Sarah was apparently calling her mom, crying about feeling silenced by me. So their mother decided the family needed to keep an eye on things and started organizing these weekly support calls where they'd discuss the situation and figure out how to help Sarah. I asked Amy what they were planning to do, and she admitted they'd been talking about staging some kind of intervention to get me to back off. An intervention for being helpful during cancer treatment. But here's the thing that really messed me up. Amy tells me she's seen this exact same pattern before. With Sarah's previous engagements. Sarah's been engaged twice before me. Both relationships ended with similar family meetings and the guys being painted as controlling or toxic or whatever. But their parents made Amy promise never to talk about the pattern with outsiders because it would hurt the family's reputation. Amy says she's tired of keeping secrets and watching the same thing happen again, especially since she actually likes me. She says Sarah learned a long time ago that staying the victim requires constant story management, and their mother enables it because she still sees Sarah as the sick little girl who needs protection. I asked Amy why she was telling me this now, and she said because last week's family call included discussions about whether they should reach out to Sarah's cancer support group and her social media followers to document the emotional trauma I was causing. Basically, they were planning to build a bigger case against me. I drove home after that conversation feeling like my entire reality had been flipped upside down. Like, I thought I was being a good supportive partner, and apparently I've been the villain in some family mess for months, without even knowing it. Sarah was at her friend Rachel's house when I got home, so I haven't had a chance to bring any of this up yet. Honestly, I don't even know what to say. How do you tell someone you found out their entire family has been plotting against you? How do you argue with someone's lived experience, even when you know it's not the whole story? I keep thinking about all those comments on her posts, calling her brave for dealing with a toxic partner, and wondering if this is really how she sees me, or if she just likes the attention and support she gets from playing the victim. I don't know what to do here. Amy says the family calls are still happening, and they're planning to escalate their concerns after Sarah's recovery is complete. I guess I'm supposed to just wait around to see what that means. The weirdest part is that I still love her. Like, even after finding out about the secret posts and the family meetings and the previous engagement pattern, I still want to work this out somehow. But I don't know how to fix a problem when I'm apparently the problem just by existing and trying to help. Edit 1. Since people are asking, yes, Amy showed me some screenshots of the family group chat where they discuss my concerning action. It's mostly stuff like me asking detailed questions during appointments or organizing Sarah's medication schedule. Things I thought were helpful, but they interpreted as controlling. Edit 2. To answer the question about Sarah's previous engagements, Amy didn't give me details, but said both guys were caring types who ended up getting overwhelmed by the family dynamics and left. She said the pattern is always the same. Sarah finds someone who wants to take care of her, then the family convinces her she's being controlled, then they all rally around protecting her from the toxic relationship. Edit 3. No, I haven't looked at the cancer support group yet, but several people have suggested I should see what she's posted there. Honestly, I'm not sure I want to know at this point. Edit 4. For those saying, I should have seen the red flags earlier, yeah, maybe you're right. But when someone has cancer, you don't really think about relationship red flags. You just try to help them survive. I guess that was my mistake. Now for the second update. First off, thank you to everyone who told me to pay attention to the red flags. You were absolutely right, and I should have listened sooner. Things have completely exploded since my last update, and honestly, I'm still trying to process what the hell just happened. Like, I thought finding out about the secret social media posts and family meetings was the worst of it, but apparently I had no clue how deep this mess actually went. So Amy, Sarah's sister, called me back 2 days after our coffee meeting. She sounded really stressed on the phone, like she'd been crying or something. She said her guilt was eating her up, again with those exact words, and that she needed to tell me something else before she lost her nerve. Apparently, during the most recent family call, which happened literally the day after we met for coffee, Sarah spent like half the time complaining about feeling suffocated and needing freedom to find herself again after cancer. Amy said Sarah kept going on and on about how she needed space to figure out who she was outside of being a cancer patient and a fiancé. But here's the part that really got to me. Sarah apparently spent a huge chunk of that call talking about Rachel's husband, Mike. I kept thinking about how often Rachel's husband, Mike's name had been coming up lately. This was a different Mike from the guy at work who had showed me Sarah's posts. This was Rachel's Mike, who Sarah kept mentioning, how he's the only man who really listens to her, and how amazing he is at supporting emotional recovery and helping Rachel with the kids, while also being this incredibly understanding person who respects her voice, unlike me, I guess. Amy said she started getting suspicious when Sarah said Mike understood her in ways her own fiancé never could. Like, what does that even mean? I've been with this woman for 3 years. After I hung up with Amy, I started thinking about how often Mike's name has been coming up lately. Sarah mentions him helping Rachel with this or that, or how Mike said something insightful about recovery, or how Mike thinks Sarah should do X or Y. I'd known Rachel and her husband Mike for about a year. We'd done couples dinners and hangouts, which is why I felt comfortable with everything Mike had done to help during Sarah's treatment. So I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I went through my phone records and my calendar and compared them against all the times Sarah had fought with me about driving and needing independence over the past few months. And holy shit, every single time Sarah picked a fight about me being controlling about transportation, every time she said she needed to prove her independence by finding her own rides, every single one of those times coincided with Mike offering to drive her somewhere. I found text messages where she'd mentioned Mike giving her rides to family dinners, Mike driving her to follow-up appointments, Mike picking her up from her mom's house, all the times when she'd accused me of being too protective about driving and said she needed space to handle things herself. She'd start a fight with me about being controlling. I'd back off to give her space, and then Mike would swoop in to help with transportation. And I thought I was being supportive by not arguing when she said she needed independence. I felt like such an idiot. All those fights about me being overprotective about driving. She was basically creating cover stories to spend time alone with Mike. 3 weeks later, Sarah's mom threw this welcome back party to celebrate the end of Sarah's treatment. Both our families, plus Rachel and Mike and their kids, some co-workers, like 30 people in their backyard, with catered food and everything. Sarah's mom had been planning it for weeks, kept talking about how it was going to be this beautiful celebration of Sarah's strength and recovery. I was honestly dreading the whole thing after everything I'd learned, but I figured I'd go and try to act normal and figure out what to do later. Sarah seemed happy and relieved, talking to everyone about being cancer-free and ready to start the next chapter of her life. That phrase makes me sick now, by the way. So I'm standing around during the appetizer part of the party, trying to make small talk and not think about Mike being there, when I see Rachel by the drink table looking kind of tired. She's got their youngest kid on her hip and looks like she could use a break. I go over to thank her for everything her family has done to support Sarah's recovery. I thought I should acknowledge how much Mike had helped, right? So I specifically mentioned how dedicated Mike has been and how grateful I am that Rachel was willing to share him during such a difficult time. Then I start listing off specific examples. How Mike drove Sarah to the Tuesday family dinner at her parents' house when I had that late work meeting. How he took her to her Thursday oncology follow-up when I was stuck in that presentation. Rachel's face just changed. She handed the baby to someone else. She pulls me aside and asks me to repeat the dates and times. So I show her my calendar with all my notes about who was driving Sarah, where and when. I know it looks obsessive, but I was trying to coordinate everything. And Rachel just stares at my phone screen for like 30 seconds without saying anything. Then she tells me that Mike said he was working late both those nights. Tuesday family dinner. Mike told her he had a client meeting that ran until 9 p.m. Thursday appointment. He said he was covering for a sick coworker and wouldn't be home until after 8. We're standing there looking at my detailed calendar notes, and Rachel is realizing her husband has lied to her about his whereabouts at least 6 different times over the past month. Rachel didn't even say anything to me. She just marched straight across the yard to where Mike was talking to Sarah's dad about grilling techniques or something. I followed her because honestly, I didn't know what else to do. Rachel walks right up to Mike and asks him about those client meetings he's been having on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Mike looks confused and starts talking about work stuff, but Rachel cuts him off and tells him it's funny because he's actually been driving Sarah around town during his fake work meetings. Mike tries to deny it, but Rachel is holding my phone with the calendar, and she starts reading off dates and times. She tells him that Tuesday the 15th, he said he was working late, but he was actually at Sarah's family dinner. Thursday the 18th, he said he was covering for Jim, but he was actually at the cancer center. This is all happening in front of like half the party, and people are starting to stare. Mike is getting defensive and saying Rachel is being paranoid and that he was just helping a friend. But then Rachel says something that changes everything. She says she's been suspicious for weeks because of weird phone calls and changes in his schedule, and that she found hotel receipts in his car the previous week. Hotel receipts. She just says it right there in front of everyone. Mike completely falls apart, just starts crying and admitting to everything. Yes, he'd been having an affair with Sarah. Yes, he'd been lying about working late. Yes, the hotel receipts were from times they'd been together. Sarah is standing 10 feet away talking to her cousin, and she hears Mike confessing and runs over trying to interrupt. She's saying stuff like, it wasn't like that, and it was just emotional support during a vulnerable time, and that nobody understands what she was going through. But Rachel just looks at her and tells her that emotional support doesn't require hotel rooms. She found receipts for the Marriott downtown with dates and times. The whole party just stopped. Both our families standing around listening to this mess unfold. Sarah's mom trying to figure out what was happening. My future father-in-law looking like he wanted to disappear into the ground. I honestly don't remember much after that. I think I said something to Sarah like, "We're done," and just left. Drove home, packed everything I owned, which took 2 hours because I had to fit everything in my car, and went to my sister's place. I left Sarah a note on the kitchen counter that just said, "I'm done being painted as the bad guy in your story. The next morning, Sarah shows up at our apartment, crying and begging me to talk to her. But obviously I wasn't there anymore. She called me like 15 times, but I'd already blocked her number. Then she tried coming to my sister's house, but my sister wouldn't even let her on the property. Sarah kept texting from different numbers saying the affair meant nothing, and she was just confused and looking for validation after feeling powerless during cancer treatment. That Mike took advantage of her vulnerability, and she never meant for it to go that far. All this stuff about how she needed me to understand that cancer changes you and makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. But I can't do this anymore. I can't be responsible for fixing someone else's bad decisions just because they had cancer. It's been 2 weeks since the party, and my sister told me that Sarah's family is already spreading a new version of the story. Now I'm the asshole who abandoned her during recovery, and my controlling actions during treatment drove her to seek comfort elsewhere. Like I forced her to have an affair by being too helpful. And get this, Sarah's back on social media posting about toxic relationships and learning to value herself after surviving cancer. Hundreds of comments from people telling her how brave she is for getting away from someone who didn't appreciate her strength. The cancer survivor community is rallying around her like she's this inspiration for leaving an abusive situation. I keep reading these comments from people who have no idea what actually happened, talking about how proud they are of her for choosing herself and breaking free from someone who tried to control her recovery journey. She's managed to turn cheating on me into another story about her being a brave cancer survivor who overcame obstacles. Rachel filed for divorce last week, by the way. But somehow in Sarah's version of events, I'm still the villain, and she's still the hero who survived cancer and a toxic relationship. I don't know what I was expecting. I guess I thought if I just tried hard enough to be supportive, if I organized everything perfectly and took care of all the stressful parts, things would work out. But apparently, no matter what I did, I was always going to end up being the controlling boyfriend who made her life harder. Amy texted me yesterday saying the family is planning to move forward with their concerns about my actions, whatever that means. Like they're still trying to punish me, even though we're not even together anymore. I guess the good news is I don't have to deal with any of this anymore. The bad news is I wasted 3 years of my life on someone who was never going to see me as anything other than another obstacle to overcome. Edit. Since so many people are asking about the hotel receipts, Rachel found them under the floor mat in Mike's car. Apparently there were like 5 different receipts from the past month, all for weekday afternoon meetings that Mike said were work-related. Rachel had been suspicious for weeks, but the receipts confirmed her suspicions about the affair. To everyone saying I should have seen this coming, yeah, you're probably right. But when someone has cancer, you don't really think, maybe they're using this as cover for an affair. You just try to help them survive. I guess that makes me naive, but I'd rather be naive than cynical about cancer patients. For those asking what happened to Mike and Rachel, they're getting divorced. Rachel's keeping the house and has primary custody of the kids. Mike moved in with his brother, and apparently Sarah tried to contact him after everything blew up, but he blocked her number. Guess he realized she wasn't worth losing his family over. Yes, I'm doing okay staying at my sister's place. She's been amazing through all this, and keeps reminding me that none of this was my fault. Her husband thinks I should consider it a bullet dodged, since Sarah's family would have made my life hell no matter what I did. The weirdest part is I still feel guilty sometimes. Like maybe if I'd handled her treatment differently or been less organized about everything, she wouldn't have felt the need to look elsewhere for support. But then I remember the secret social media posts and the family meetings, and I realize this was never really about how I handled her cancer. This was about a pattern of actions that started way before I ever met her.